All right, there we go. Hey, Connor, good morning. I want to, this is to build on what we talked about during Mastermind last week. Last week was talking about converting sellers or starting to build a seller pipeline and really where that comes from and other things you can do outside of just waiting for your past clients to sell. Obviously, that's really important to do that. And another tip to add to that, which we probably touched on briefly, but I want to remind you newer folks, is there's a closed drip that when you move people to closed in Boomtown, after you close them starts. And one of the reminders of that closed drip is to send the recommendation, the review email, so they can leave you a review on Zillow, on our Google page, but also to set up an e-alert for their neighborhood or for homes similar to their home to help them continue to monitor the market around the property they just purchased. Now, it doesn't have to be weekly or anything like that. Maybe monthly, maybe bi-monthly, something like that. Something just to keep it in front of them. And that's just a way that you're continuing to provide value, because I guarantee you, and it probably applies to every one of you who have bought a house before, you're looking when you see a sign go up in the neighborhood, right? And then you're like, oh, well, I wonder what they listed for. And then when it closes, you're like, oh, well, I wonder what they got for it. So provide that to your clients. And like I said, that's built into the closed drip. As long as you properly move your client to closed, it's going to start that closed drip with those reminders to do that for you, setting those to-dos for you in Boomtown. So make sure that you're doing that. That's, I think, a nice value add for our clients to keep them informed of what's going on around the property they just purchased. And that can apply to investors too, right? It doesn't just have to be primary residence, folks. So take advantage of that. Use that to continue to provide that value, because then those are soft touches too. They know it's a drip, but at least you thought enough to set it up, right? And something like that, if it's going out that infrequently, you can copy yourself on it too. And then if you see some crazy outlier, or you notice a similar property sold for 25K more 3 months later, you can say, wow, look at what's happening in the neighborhood. You guys made a really solid choice. Stuff like that. So I've had clients several times like write me on Facebook and say, man, I just saw what one on my street listed for. We really got in at a good time. And I'm like, yeah, you did. Now, so that's just fun to have those conversations, because fun conversations are nice and easy, right? So just a little bit of value add for that to follow up on what we talked about last week. But today, I really wanted to kind of extrapolate that a little bit further and go a little non-conventional, at least as far as we standardly approach things. I have never, saved for when I first started the company, bought lists, pulled lists of expireds, or called FSBOs or anything like that in an attempt to get listings. But there are hundreds of agents that do it, and it's a legitimate approach to business. And if you're looking to get more listings, and if you've got the time and want to put the effort in, I wanted to visit this for you guys just so you have some insight on how to do it. And then, of course, we can sidebar after the fact as you want to start to approach. Of course, I would always say start near you, right? An area that you can present yourself of being an expert at, whether it's your neighborhood or just the city you live in, things like that. And then you can go from there. Maybe it's places that you end up selling homes in. Maybe you sell a home to a buyer in a neighborhood, and after you do that, you notice that there's expireds from the last 6 months or so in the neighborhood. Hey, I just sold a house to a client there. I have people looking in this area. Have you thought about listing again? Something like that. So we'll talk about how to do that and kind of how to go about that. But first, I wanted to kind of give just a little bit of context on some strategy behind doing that, and then actually showing you how we can go about doing it in the systems we have access to. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And there are a ton of resources out there that you can pull. So feel free to do your own research if you like. These are just some that I saw when I was kind of poking around that I thought had some really good information that we could go through on our call today. And if anybody has any questions or any comments, please feel free to chime in, okay? So first, thinking about expired listings, you know, why with both of these sellers, the first thing you have to think about is their mindset, right? Like, how did we get to this point? Why did we make the choices? Why did they make the choices they made to list in the first place, list on their own, or then let it expire, right? And what information can you gather around that to at least be prepared to have a conversation before you even approach anyone? You don't want to approach anybody cold. Hey, I saw your listing expired. You want to list it again? Get the hell out of here. You're the sixth agent who's knocked on my door. You know, piss off. What are you going to do to be prepared to overcome an objection like that? Because I can tell you, if you don't come with some knowledge and you haven't done a little bit of pre-work, you're going to get a very icy reception most of the time. Okay. So you want to be prepared to kind of deal with that. So thinking about why people have gotten to this point. Okay. First of all, you can look at expired listings in MLS. It's really, really super easy to find. For example, Flex at the coast. You go to the quick search, you search status of expired. I whittled it down a little bit because there was like 2,700. I did it like the last 6 months, and I just reduced it to Onslow and Pender County. There's 143. That would keep anybody busy for a long time. But you know, what I would do is kind of start where I am. You Hampstead folks around Sloop Point, you see there's a couple there, right? There's a ton on the beach, probably not hugely surprising given where the market has gone a little bit and properties on the beach and how they sell in general. There's a couple in Sneads Ferry. There's a couple in Jacksonville. You know, there are things there. And then you can play with it however you want. Maybe you don't want to deal with something under $200,000. You know, put the price point there. I might put it just a little bit below that. But you're going to have information there to look through. But then what do you do with that information? Well, the next question is, well, how do I get in touch with the people, right? Because that's usually a really big challenge. So this is one way you could go about doing it. First, you want to see, you know, always double check that it hasn't been relisted, okay? Because if it shows up and expired, it could also be active again, or it could also be pending or under contract. So you don't want to call somebody that's expired and be like, it's on the market live right now, and look like you obviously didn't do your homework, right? So you want to make sure that you cross-reference this stuff, okay? This is where you start, but then you got to go back and cross-reference. So you're going to kind of go through a list of expires and say, okay, well, that one looks appealing. Maybe looking at it, I can see why it didn't sell, because I know Topsail Reef really well, right? Because I sold one in there. And I know based on what I'm looking at, this price probably doesn't make sense. And I can see that it was listed for, you know, however long it was listed for. Let's see. Well, it was listed for 465 days before it sold back in 2017, and then it was listed for 27 days before they pulled it off the market this time. Also, a good way to see it is if you look at the history here, you should see if it's relisted. So that's a quick way to do it too. I think that will apply in Triangle MLS. We'll look at that in a second, Eli and Brandon. Right? But then when you go back to the report, both of our MLSs have this property report link in it, right? And this is where I always recommend going to verify the tax information that's in the listing, because the agents don't always type the right PIN number in there or the right legal description. This might not be the best one because it's a freaking condo, and condos are frustrating. So let me just, for the sake of the discussion, go to another one here. So you can see here who the owners are, right? And you can see what their mailing address is. So this is a Holly Ridge property, but look who owns it and look where they live. You know, a lot of these properties aren't owned by they're not primary residences. So if you're going to do some initial reach out, you know, mail might be one of the best ways. right? And we'll talk about that in a minute when we look at some of these best practices. Another way to go about doing this is if you want to try to get phone numbers, has anybody ever used whitepages.com? It's kind of like an online phone book, right? You can put in name, city, whatever, and maybe get a home phone number or not. It's really dicey with mobiles, but if people still have landlines, I found that it can be pretty accurate. That's another good way to do some reach out. And then could anybody guess what another one might be?
Google.
Google is always good. Yep.
Call the previous listing agent and see if they're able to share the information.
That's ballsy. But yeah, that's a legitimate answer, Janine.
Facebook.
Social media, yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Social media. Find them and message them on Facebook, especially if you can tell that they're active on Facebook, right? It means they'll probably check their messenger. Or an often underlooked social media resource, LinkedIn. Serious people use LinkedIn. So take a look at LinkedIn if you can't find them. And then, beyond mailing, emailing, phone numbers, social media, I think there's one more that you could probably try other than hitting up the other agent. So that's 5. So maybe one more. Door knocking. Hey, I was in the neighborhood showing another property to a client. I was in the neighborhood prospecting properties for another client. I noticed that yours was recently expired. I just wanted to pop by and see if you were still interested in listing. Because my team has people looking in this area from time to time, and we might be able to help you get it sold. Are you still open to that? But again, if you're going to do that, I suggest be very prepared. I wouldn't go without a seller strategy session. I wouldn't go with prepared comps, or I would go without prepared comps. Being prepared to really have a discussion about the listing before, maybe print the previous MLS sheet so you have the information from that to really have a discussion about it. Any thoughts, questions about that, right or wrong? Brandon, I know we haven't really done this, Janine either, but thoughts?
I love the way you made it easy. I didn't realize that property record, you could actually click on that and get the people's information, at least the name of the person. I just started dabbling and trying to figure this out. And I was actually going out to tax records.
Right? Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's so clunky. This is a lot easier.
Because all the county websites are different and most of them are completely cumbersome and a pain in the butt. Also, which I failed to point out, look right here, White Pages listing. It's right on that page.
Right there. Oh, wow. That's great.
So it didn't open. I think I got a pop-up blocker or something, but you can copy and paste it or whatever.
I've never done any of this. I've never tried expireds. I've never done any door knocking. I know people have success with it. I should try it. A lot of people up here in the Triangle use Vulcan 7. If you guys have heard of that, it's an expired dialing service, I believe, or something like that. There's definitely business to be had from it. I've just never done it. So it's interesting to kind of talk through and think about, kind of adding it as a option.
For you guys in the Triangle, just really quickly, same thing here. You'd come to expired. You could also do withdrawn. That can get really funky sometimes if you do that. So you could do expired over. I should have done the date range first, but I don't think it'll let you.
2 other things real quick. I don't know if your MLS back home provides forewarn or not. If you guys are familiar what forewarn is, you can enter someone's phone number. It pulls up their background. One of the things that pulls up on forewarn, I tested this on myself, is it shows what property you own, and it will say what the mortgage was you took out when you bought the property. And so if you have forewarn, and also real property resource, if you are realtor property resource, the RPR program, if you want to look in there, when you pull up a property, it tells you the same thing. So sometimes it's helpful to know, if you find a seller that could be in a tight, right? They bought a home and they owe a lot on it, but they may be more motivated to sell as opposed to someone who's had a parcel for 30 years and they basically have it paid off or owe next to nothing to it.
You can see that on this report. Sometimes if there's a mortgage, you can see that they have what the balance was when they borrowed. You can see the purchase price, of course, but sometimes on this, you can see that as well. It's not on here for this particular one, but you can see it. You can see it sometimes. So it's worth checking out there too. Let's see. I don't know why MLS isn't.
Hey, Doug, you can use the status date. It's towards the bottom of the field rather than that closing date field.
Oh, the date range,
Yeah, let me see.
down here.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. Sorry,
course.
I don't think I've ever used that field before. Okay, so let's do Raleigh. 196 in the last 6 months. So, Brandon, you're trying to farm your neighborhood. You've already made several inroads with your neighbors, right, who are thinking about selling.
Yeah.
That would be a good place to start, Chatham Park, right? Eli, start around you, something like that. Same thing with you guys. That's where I would start if you're interested in doing this, because you can present yourself as that expert and then start to work out from there, right? And build on that. So that's how you go about pulling those from your MLS. Now, to get back to just some of the tips from expired listings. Of course, other real estate, there are tons of resources. I'll share these links so you guys can read through them after the fact. Buy expired leads. This is what I was doing when I first started Oceanair to try and get some traction, was RedX, which is similar to what Brandon was mentioned. You can buy lists, and then I was paying for a service to call to try and set up appointments. Juice wasn't worth the squeeze, but I gave it a shot, right? So trust me, I've tried a lot more than this one system and found out that it wasn't worth the money. That's part of what being in real estate is about. But again, that's what it is. Search public records. That's kind of what we were doing. I would say that it's going to be an MLS if it was listed on MLS, so you don't necessarily need to go into public records. What I could say is proceed with caution. You can check the obituaries. I saw something on a real estate group the other day, and the guy was like, and it wasn't an agent, but it was a buyer. And he was like, I talked to my neighbor about if he ever wanted to sell his house. And he said, yeah, I would sell it, but my plan is to die in this house. And, not to be morbid or anything, but he found out the guy had like stage 5 cancer. And he was like, is it bad form for me to go ask him if we can get under contract and I can buy it? So you got to be careful when you have conversations with people, right? So tread lightly and tread with some empathy, but all the information you can have, it can only help you. So a couple of best practices here for after you've identified them, come up with a strategy, right? Before you start dialing or writing emails, take some time to really have an approach. Like when we talk about sitting down the prospect, it's not just, all right, I'm going to call this number and say, hey, I'm checking in, right? No, we're looking at their activity. We're looking at their criteria. We're reading back through the conversations that we've had with them. That's the approach for our pipeline. How do you approach and build a pipeline of people that you don't have any communication with yet? Well, you look at their situation. Maybe how many times have they had it listed? What was the pricing history like? Did it ever make sense? Do you have other examples in their neighborhood or similar comps that you can share with them? This is kind of the framework of your game plan that you want to put together before you even start to reach out to anyone, because you want to be prepared to answer questions they have. You want to be prepared to provide information to them. You don't want to just introduce yourself and offer a service and then they ask you something and you're not prepared to speak on it, because you know how favorably they're going to look on your offer at that point? Probably not very much, right? Now we can always say, I saw a couple of things about that. I brought this. Let me look into that as well so we can add that to the conversation. Something like that. Always being able to think on your feet is important, just like when we get a sign call or we get a Boomtown lead. and we have to pause for a second to get the information we need. That's okay, but be prepared to a degree, right? Calling and emailing, this, this says it's the most tried and true, and this is basically the thing. Introduce yourself, get to the point, right? Be clear about what you're doing. Don't try and, dick around with them. Focus on them and their goals, what they're trying to achieve. Help them understand why you're the right person to help them do that. Now, that's where you bring in the team aspect. We treat it like a professional. No iPhone pictures. We always do a 3D Matterport tour. We're always doing professional measurements. We have the option to do drone and twilight photos for the right listing. We're going to do open houses so we can get walk-ins in there for you. We're going to reverse prospect in our database of 40,000 plus to find folks that it has a good match score with. So we're not just waiting for another agent to bring a buyer. Our team is actively trying to bring a buyer for you too. And that would be to both of our benefits, because I know who I'm working with if it's on our team. And I know that they approach business like we do, right? Sell the benefit and the value of all that, and then set up a meeting. Be ready to ask them what they thought didn't work before and how you can overcome that. Hopefully it's something that is easy to overcome. Like my agent was terrible at communication. They never talked to me. I never got feedback about listings. Conversely, you want to ask, well, okay, I saw that it was listed for 30 days before you pulled it off the market. On average, around that time, homes in your neighborhood were selling in about 14 days. Why do you think it didn't sell? What feedback did your agent provide you from themselves or from another agent or their clients or other visitors who went there? What did you think about that feedback? Was it unexpected? Did you kind of expect some of it? Like that. Here's a good script just to base it on, right? And again, I'll send this to you guys, so don't feel like you have to process all of it right now, but to just give you a baseline to start with, okay? Expired listing letters. Here's a nice template, right? For a perfect example, the listing that we looked at that's in Holly Ridge that the owners live in Cary, right? You could try to reach out, call, maybe leave a message, follow up with a letter. You know what? How many people get letters that actually mean anything in the mail anymore? That are really personalized, that are handwritten, or at least signed, that you can tell are actually signed. Even the letters that I get that are signed now are auto-signed. They weren't really signed by a person. So how can you stand out? How can you do something different? In the case of somebody like Brandon or Janine, I would be prepared to include something in there about how many transactions I've had and how many sellers I've had and how many of those listings sold for at or above list price, or give an overall percentage of what that that list to sold price was. And of course, hey, put a page in there with reviews, right? This thing could be a couple pages long, front and back, put it together, drop a couple things in there, right? All of those things could be done. And again, this is just something to work from, just like our email templates, gives you a base to build on. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you're not comfortable using these or writing your own, I love Chat GPT. I've used that for my listing remarks, and I don't use it word for word, but it really gives me a nice framework to kind of build within, right? So I would suggest checking that out. Automated drip campaigns, you can do this in Boomtown. If you get folks' email addresses, tag them as a potential seller, put them on build an expired drip, put them on the expired drip. We can do that. I would honestly, I haven't looked recently, and they update them all the time. Boomtown's always adding their own drips in there, which you can use. Now, I want you using our qualified drips for our qualified clients, but for nurture, watch, sellers, feel free to use any of those Boomtown drip templates. I'm fine with it, okay? Look through them, understand them, see what's in there, preview them, and use whatever you think would be really good. Again, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. And the people that write these aren't, slouches. They do this for a living. So they're, the content is pretty good. And you can always just copy it and then put your own flair in it and save the template that way. Right. And then you can build out a drip just like we do for qualified buyers. SMS, that you can incorporate that into the drip. When we build our drips, you can build a text component in there. Of course, you want to make sure, and this is why we have different qualified drips, that the number you have is actually a cell phone number and not a landline, right? But you can build that right in there. So we already have the tools to do an email and text campaign at your fingertips within Boomtown. Okay. Social media. Well, I can't talk enough about social media. If you haven't heard me talk about social media before, you're sitting around like this. I don't know. Social media is important. You got to put yourself out there. You got to let people know what you're doing. Brandon made a great video yesterday and got some great remarks on it. How are you putting yourself out there to build trust within your sphere? Again, we don't know who's watching, but they're definitely not watching if you're not putting yourself out there. So build that into your ideal weekly schedule so you can do that, right? Make a plan. Brandon does it almost after every meeting, or at least one meeting a week. After we finish our team meeting, he's on the front porch with the ring light, knocking his video out. And then he's probably doing one sitting at his desk at his house every week too. Everybody can do those, right? Takes 10 minutes of planning and maybe 15 minutes of execution, or vice versa, something like that. So you're looking at less than 30 minutes tops. This is the same thing. Share videos, come up with content around why listings are expired. Hey, I've seen a lot of expired listings in the marketplace lately. Honestly, in my opinion, the biggest reason is pricing. People aren't adjusting to the market and expectations. Some sellers are still under the impression that we're in the same market that we were during COVID, and that they can just throw a price out there and people are going to show up before the signs even in the ground. Yes, homes are still selling quickly, but it's the homes that are turnkey and that are priced right that are going to stand out, because buyers are being more discriminating in this market when it costs more to borrow money. As a seller, you need to be in position to look favorable to them. You can't just throw it out there anymore. Hope that's helpful. Online advertising, you can do that to a degree. You have the option to do that stuff on your own. The team does a lot of marketing. That's usually to drive leads to the site. I have done seller marketing through Boomtown before, because you can do that just like you do for buyers. Universally, it's really not well regarded. It wasn't when I did it, and I've read through lots of other Boomtown folks who don't do it either. It's just another juice not worth the squeeze. You can always do mailers. People are still doing mailings. Like I said, if you're going to do, you want to farm a neighborhood, we've got resources that we can tie you in that you can do this. These are all things that you can write off if you want to do it, right? And just remember, you doing this is going to be a sphere lead, right? So you're looking at that 70 or 75% if you convert these people, okay? Because you're putting in the marketing effort, right? You're bringing them to the team, right? So keep that in mind. Offer a free strategy session. Put yourself out there. Hey, this Thursday at 5 o'clock, I'm doing a seller strategy session on Zoom. Doesn't cost anything. I'll be there to answer your questions if you're thinking about selling in the next couple of years. Just jump on. Here's the link. I'd love to chat with you and answer any questions you have about real estate. Why not? You get one person that shows up, and that one person decides to buy or sell, it was worth the 5 minutes it took for you to post the post and the 30 minutes that you sat in a conversation with them, right? Sure as hell is better than driving 1 hour one way to show a house and then they don't buy it, right? Or having to call somebody 7 times before they say, I'm not interested. Now, I'm not saying those other approaches don't convert people too, right? But just think about the opportunity here that maybe you're not taking advantage of.
And Doug, I love that idea. And just so if you do go that route, you can make your attendees blind so they can't see them, which is really cool. So there only may be one person on the line, but they don't know they're the only person. As far as they know, there's 25 other people. So always recommend that.
And people can ask questions in chat, right? So they don't have to present their face or their voice to anybody else, and the chat can just come to you directly, right? and then you can answer them back or
Exactly.
whatever, any of those
Yep.
things. And then you can use it to set up a one-on-one or use it to set up an actual listing appointment where you go visit their home. Okay, so how would you wrap up something like this? Okay, since you're interested, really the same thing we would do with somebody on the call. The next step is for me to do some research and then bring it to you at your home so you can show me around, tell me what you've done, tell me about maybe what you're thinking about doing, ask me what I would suggest you do before listing, and look at the data so we can position you best in the marketplace. I'm available X, Y, and Z. As always, you're giving them the time and the day, right? Bottom line, it's a great opportunity. It's one, especially in our setup, that you're going to even be able to make more money off of if you're able to capitalize on it. So figure out how you can fit it into your daily schedule, right? We can, of course, sidebar. I'd love to hear best practices on this. If you guys start to try it out, what's working, what's not. That's the beauty of being on a team like ours is we can share our successes and failures, right? Just like Eli. Eli has started putting his Boomtown number in the subject field of his e-alerts. And he's got several texts replying about the e-alerts to his Boomtown number. Now, you could put your own cell phone number there if you wanted to, but putting your Boomtown number keeps it all in the system, right? So it's right there tied to their lead and it's right there in their history and you can always access it, right? And then when you actually get in front of them, okay, well, now we can use my number. That's easier. But I know a lot of people love to use the Now app and it keeps everything right there and it makes it really simple. It comes down to what's going to work best for you. So just figure that out. All right. Was that helpful with expireds? Anything else on that before we kind of switch over to FSBOs?
Let me add one thing real quick. And if you meet with an expired, I would suggest doing this if you get an appointment. I've actually started doing this with my listing appointments that I'm going on. When I do my comps for listings now, I'm pulling data from showing time for the town and for the county for the prior month, showing how many the average price point in that town. The average number of showings at that price point in that town over the last month. One of the reasons Doug indicated this earlier, a lot of the expired listings, I believe, come from agents that are desperate for business. They'll list the home for whatever, and they don't set the right expectation. And so, a home listed for $360, the seller is completely unrealistic, and they say they want $450 for it. But the agent is so desperate for business, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it, $450," and then it sits there and it doesn't sell, and the listing becomes expired. They never provided that data to set the right expectation. And so if you can get in front of the seller and say, "Hey man, listen, at your price point in Wake County over the last month, new listings were averaging 5 showings a month," right? So this is what we should reasonably expect. Use that data to set the right expectation, really for 2 reasons. One, to provide value and come across as a professional, to know that, so you give them the impression that you're an expert and you know what you're talking about, right? You're good at this, as opposed to the last agent was like, "Hey, just sign this and let's get this thing on the market." You don't want to put a sign in the yard and let it sit there for 3 months. That is an advertisement for their neighbor to never call you because it looks like you don't know what you're doing. But really, again, it's that setting that expectation. Hey, this price makes sense. You should expect this much traffic. If we're not getting that traffic based on the data, we need to recalibrate. That's it.
That's pretty perfect.
Yeah, I think it's great advice because when you think about it, it's never the person who put the house on the market, the seller. He's never going to say it's my fault, right? He may have done a lot of things that made that listing not sell, but he's always going to point the finger at the listing agent, right? So if we come in positive with data and appear to be the expert, definitely a strong point. I do love what you were talking about earlier too, Doug, about those questions. Those questions are really great ways to get to how you can sell yourself, right? And you actually approach it with talking more about them and making it more about them, and then flipping the script. Now I know all these, I know that you didn't like this and you didn't like that. Now I can flip it and sell myself a little different way. But they really appreciate it's all about them first.
100%. It's kind of the ask and acknowledge. Ask and acknowledge. We talk about that. That's a great. I mean, that you should be doing that with anybody. that you talk to when it comes to what we do. It's just a little bit a different line of questioning, because it's a seller versus a buyer, but same thing, because you can ask buyers who've bought before, what did you enjoy about the process and what was really a challenge? And then you know what to look out for, right? You know where to tread lightly, because where they're going to have sensitive spots or as part of the process.
Exactly. They help build your strategy.
That's exactly right. So you're not going in there blind. I mean, they're giving you the answers in the playbook of how to work around it to keep them in their comfort zone and address what's most important to them. So that's this. I'm gonna send this link to you guys so you can use it after the fact. FSBOs. Woo! FSBOs. Any thoughts on FSBOs? Janine, how many FSBOs have you done at this point?
5.
Brandon, how many have you done? Do you know?
I have done one for sale by owner.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I've done 4 or 5, something like that. And it's usually, this is how it usually happens. It's, our clients are looking everywhere and they're looking on Zillow. So that's where we need to start. On Zillow, you go to build a search and you go to you go to for sale, go to more, and then you got this little section right here. Either by agent or by owner or other, right? And then you can set the parameters however you want. Owner posted. If it's agent listed, if it's agent listed and by owner or other, it's probably a limited services. So you'd have to tread lightly there, because technically they still have an agency agreement, right? But these other ones, and then I did this one for just Wilmington, but you can do it like anything, wherever you want, right? And then there's 38 right now in Wilmington that are for sale by owner. And then, so it's a similar approach. You can look it up. I would look it up in MLS to see if it was listed with an agent previously, what that history looked like, how long it was on the market, how it was priced, and then kind of the same approach for getting their information through the tax records. If it wasn't listed on MLS, you can still go in MLS and open any property and then just go back to the search and then search for the property. There's more than one way to access the information. Now, I will tell you the only way, in my experience, to get to the MLS tax suite is through MLS. So you can't just save this link and then open it. It makes you route through your login on MLS to get to it. But you can still go in here and search for any property and then see if it's not in MLS. Because if it was in MLS previously, then you can get to it this way. And it might not even have been when they owned it or even when they bought it in MLS. But if you find it, it can still get you to the tax records, which should have their current information on there as far as it comes to reaching out to them. Any questions about that?
Just one question, Doug. You said some of those LTDs or the companies that put them on MLS for you, they are licensed agents?
You have to be licensed to put a listing in MLS.
Yeah, Ellen, they just pay a nominal fee to have access to the MLS, but I've done them before. I represented a buyer through, it's essentially doing a FSBO, because you have to negotiate and communicate directly with the seller, but they do have, it's just a way for them to get their listing in MLS.
Yeah.
The agent's not going to do anything. It's like,
right, they're not going to do anything.
Yeah. It's a $500 flat fee. They enter it in MLS and then they step off.
And they step off.
And they say, hey, send me the contract when you get under contract.
Right. Yep.
That's the one I'm dealing with, but he was only like $100. But so that organization actually has a license.
Well, there are usually some agent somewhere not in the local area. Like the one I did in Leland, the guy was in Florida or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they're licensed in North Carolina. They just might be licensed in 10 different states and they're based out of Orlando or whatever.
Yes.
The thing with that, Ellen, is if that person approaches you with any of these, if the seller approaches you, you're allowed to have a conversation with them. You just can't approach someone who has an agency agreement.
Got it.
Somebody asks for help, we're free to answer their questions for them and offer our services. It's just about where it starts. But yeah, it's important to understand kind of that so you can walk around
Yes.
that balance.
That's why I was asking. Because
Yeah.
since I found their name, I'm like, oh, I can search all the listings based on that company, but I can't because I have to wait till they proactively reach out to me.
Right. So that's why I would like take off the agent listed thing for this one to make sure you're not getting those limited service ones and that it's truly the owner or somebody on their behalf that's not an agent. And that's the whole thing with the NAR now. It's like, why do we need NAR? Well, currently we need NAR primarily because if you're not a member of NAR, the MLS, your local MLS board won't give you access to MLS, or your local board of realtors won't give you access to MLS. They're the gatekeepers. So, and that's why you have to do that to be able to post the listings in MLS, which is why people are so pissed is that they gave all of our listings to Zillow and Realtor and everything. Anyways, that's a whole nother discussion. But so this is how you find the properties. And then I think you take a really similar approach. Of course, do your research, find the previous listing if it was listed before, find out how long it's been listed on Zillow. You know, I probably wouldn't look so much at the ones that are 4 days unless you look and you did comps and you thought maybe this one could actually sell for $850, right? Maybe they're way underselling it. Because the conversations you're going to have with expireds are going to be different than you are with FSBO. So let's get to that a little bit. Why? So finding FSBO leads, we've talked about that a little bit. It's people who have put themselves out there individually, right? You can see their listings. So you can find them ideally. If nothing else, you should be able to get their contact information directly through the Zillow listing because they want to be contacted. Now, they're being contacted by a lot of people that are thinking about things just like you. So be ready for that. You're the 5th agent that's called me this week. So if you're really not sharp and really not prepared, you're either going to get hung up on or about 30 seconds. That's it. So, you know, one thing that a lot of folks will do will use it as an entry to preview for potential clients, right? Because this isn't showing up in my searches through MLS and we're having a real hard time finding options right now. So I'm previewing it on my own for clients that I think it might be a good fit for, right? And then if you get there, you've got the opportunity to talk a little bit more about, well, why didn't you list it? Have you thought about listing? I looked at the comps. I think you could actually be here if you marketed it to a bigger audience, and that would more than make up for the agent's commission. Because the big thing about both of these is understanding where the people are in their mind, right? And here we are. Understand the mindset of a FSBO. What would you assume, don't look at the screen, is the first reason that people don't list with an agent and decide to FSBO?
Commission.
And more money.
They think they're going to save money. Well, statistics show that they actually don't, because they don't have a true understanding of where to market their property list price wise. And then the biggest thing is what?
They cut out buyers
Yeah. How?
because the buyers will be like, oh, I got to pay that commission myself. I'm walking away.
Possibly, but I think there's a bigger reason.
They don't know how to market the house. They don't have that power.
They don't have access to the MLS where the buyers are getting from their agents these, you know, if they're on e-alerts or whatever, it's not going to show up in the searches with it. The buyers are
That's right.
having set
There's
by their
no-
agents.
The visibility is so much lower. Now, yeah, it's on Zillow, and that's great. A ton of people are on Zillow, but I bet the more serious buyers are connected with agents getting alerts with properties delivered to their doorstep.
Yeah.
And these properties are not getting delivered to anyone's doorstep. They have to be found. I can handle the transaction on my own. Yeah, you probably can, buddy. Whatever. You know, of course not. But you got to be prepared to show the value there, right? Help
I've
them.
done this before. I know what I'm doing. Okay.
I do this every day. I've helped people who were previously for sale by owners. You know, I don't trust real estate agents. Well, you know, I try not to treat people with a broad brush. Let me show you what my clients have to say about me. Let me show you the reviews our team's got. You know, I've got a family too. I understand your home is your biggest asset.
I mean, half the time they don't understand, like, okay, where are you going to get, do you understand that you have to fill out disclosures? What are you going to do if you get a VA buyer and you get tidewatered? How are you going to handle an appraisal? Do you, you know, have you, there's so much other stuff that they are going to be, every single FSBO that I've done representing a buyer, they don't know left from right, up from down. And you have to be very careful because you have to tread lightly as far as how much you can help them, because they're not, you're representing the buyer, but you're handling both sides of the transaction. So you have to get their email and you're sending everything to them through Loop too. And you're negotiating with them directly. And you have to, well, if they have a question, you have to be very careful about how you answer it because you're representing the buyer. Well, I don't know. What does this mean? Well, if you had an agent, you would know what this means, kind of situation. So it can, you have to be careful. I've never done it on the list side, converting a FSBO to a listing, but on the buy side, like it's a lot of work because they don't know what's going on.
I think with expireds, the mindset is going to be even that much more important than FSBOs, because the expired people want to sell.
Right.
They were fine using an agent. It just didn't work out for whatever reason. And maybe that's their own stuff, or maybe it was the agent stuff, or more likely a combination of stuff from both parties, right? But a FSBO doesn't want to use an agent. So you got to understand the mindset of why. And the first thing is, don't take things personally. We can't afford to take things personally in our business. If you feel like somebody is short with you and that hurt your feelings, I'm not sure how long you're going to last. We have to have tough skin. That's just part of the way we have to approach business, because we're going to talk to a lot of people and the majority of them aren't going to work with us. And that's okay. I'm not trying to work with the people who don't want to work with me. I want to make sure I find the people who do want help and do want to work with me.
Yeah.
Those are fine. It means I don't waste my time with you anymore. Right? But when you get an inch, walk through the door, don't let them hurt your feelings and then retreat. Right? So you got to be prepared to deal with that, hit it head on, and then have meaningful reactions to explain things to them. Right? Because their guard is going to be up, their dander is going to be up. Remember, this isn't about us. It's about helping them achieve their goals. So like we were talking about before, get them talking about their goals, what they want to accomplish, about their experience previously. Seek to understand, ask and acknowledge, and then provide your value. Right? This is a good visual. My last agent didn't do anything. This bubble should be much bigger, because I really think that's the most important one. Anyone can sell in this hot market. We can take that one off. Take that one off right now. I can handle the paperwork on my own. Okay, can I see your disclosures?
What disclosures?
What disclosures? Gotcha. I don't trust real estate agents. We talked about that a little bit already. So know why they need an agent and be able to articulate that. According to a recent report, the typical FSBO home sold for X versus Y. Even after commission, they're still able to make, what is that? A lot more. In 2020, FSBOs accounted for 8% of sales.
Oh, wow.
Most people understand that they're going to get the most value by what an agent is going to provide. Right? What sellers should know before selling their home? Only 8%. This is 2020. 46% don't even actively market their home. How many of you have seen a FSBO online, Ellen, and the first picture of the house is the side of the garage, and then the second picture is the kitchen, and then the third picture is the pool, and then there are no pictures of any bedrooms or bathrooms? No wonder no one's interested in your house. Or another conversation that Ellen has had is, well, I don't want to show my house. Well, dude, who do you think's going to buy your house, especially in this market, without seeing it first? I understand. And so the conversation Ellen and I had, guy works from home and has dogs or whatever. So yeah, that's something we can overcome. So this is what we need to do. We need to block specific times throughout the week that it can be available so people can plan accordingly. And then that way you're not inconvenienced, spur of the moment, and we can still get people in there. Because we need consistent times throughout the week that people can see it, and also that you can maintain your sanity for yourself and your dogs and get done what you need to do, see how I'm making it about them, so you can sell the house and accomplish your goals. That's the best way to make sure that you had the best shot to do that, right? So we're not telling them telling them they're an idiot directly, right? We're not saying, hey, this is not a good approach. We're showing why this other approach might be better, right? To help make sure they get what they need out of it. Hiring the right agent makes you money. It's just the stats are there, and you can go search and find updated stats, I'm sure, and be prepared to use that. Communicate the value you provide. Of course, pricing it right, using data. I have access to MLS data. Let me show you that. Everything we base is based on data and not gut feeling. You know, we might be comparing ourselves to something else that's sold in the neighborhood, but it's not even a true comp. So let me help you see exactly the data and understand that and disseminate that for you. Of course, overpricing is a big problem, which means a whole lot of bad things can happen after that. Here's another great graphic. If you want to do something like this, and we can do it as a team, of course, I would love for us to collaborate on this for a seller strategy session to incorporate for FSBOs or maybe for expireds. And like Ellen has talked about, graphics are great. Graphics are great. They make it really easy to understand instead of a bunch of words. So why you need an agent? Underpriced, you lose money. Overpriced, and then price drops, send the wrong message. What's wrong with the house? Put it at the right point. Maybe we get multiple people involved, which could drive the price up actually and sell it faster. A legitimate strategy in this market, right? Especially with that foreclosure, right, Michaela? They priced it way low. What did they get? 20 offers, sold for way over list price. It's a strategy.
I read an article about someone who couldn't get a house sold and they listed it for $1. It got the most interest. It like broke the internet. And they got way more than they ever thought.
Way more than they initially did because it brought a ton more eyes to it, right? Oh, this is a deal. Oh, this is a deal.
The whole world looked.
I paid $250,000 over list price. It's a great deal. Some more information about why this is selling yourself. We talked about this stuff, right? I'm full-time. I'm a professional. This is my career. This is what I do. This is what I focus on. Also being able to negotiate and help you understand and prepare all the right documents. More negotiation, repairs. Have you ever dealt with that before? Have you ever are you aware that you don't have to negotiate repairs? Are you aware that you're allowed to sell a home as is? No, I thought I had to make repairs. You don't, but you do have to disclose what you're aware of. You know, what if you got under contract by yourself and then the buyer came back and asked for 10K of unnecessary repairs and you didn't have me to help you understand that most of these aren't necessary and you don't have to accept any of them. That could cost you a lot of money. More than you're going to pay me. See the value there. Some more scripts. Scripts are important, right? Give you that baseline to work on. Look at this one. For sale by owner script. Hey, I'm calling about this. Is it still available? Yes. Great. I'm calling because, like we've talked about, I work with a lot of buyers and sellers in your area. I wanted to find out what I can do to help you. I don't want to pay your commission. I completely understand. But if I can net you the same amount of money you need while taking all the work off your plate, would that be worth having a conversation? Now they're getting right to the point. Now I might back that up by saying, based on where you're priced in the comps I'm looking at, I think you've got it priced low. But what if I could save you money by you don't have to make 4 more payments on it because it's going to sit on the market at that price because the data shows that it's overpriced. Now, I'm not telling you to use this exact language because that's not going to go over well. You got to think about the right way to get that across, right? And provide that value. A voicemail dialogue. I'm calling to get some more information, right? Call me back. Pretty vague. Again, you got to be prepared for people to ignore these or to be snippy sometimes, because if this is a legitimate option for you, it's a legitimate option for other people. And other people are going to be calling them. So it's just like when we talk about how you're going to set yourself apart for people that come to us naturally or organically through ads or Sphere, how are you going to set yourself apart and provide the value to these folks? This is a good one because it explores all sides of it for qualifying. If you're not going to waste your time with these folks, if I brought you a buyer, would you be willing to pay me the commission? Yes or no? Okay. How long are you going to try and sell your house before you explore other options? It looks like it's been on the market 67 days now. I looked at comps for your neighborhood, and the average days on market in your neighborhood are 25. Did you know that? Have you seen that data? I'd love to share it with you. What's your time frame, or what's your plan if you don't sell it by December, like you mentioned? You know, again, you're trying to get information out of them to have a conversation. And again, this isn't accusatory. This is to provide value to understand, you know, what their plan is, to see if they're legitimately someone you can help. Had a bad experience, you know, I get that. Understand why was it bad? I wish they'd marketed it better and made more effort. What did they do? Communication, open houses, ads, any of that stuff? Yes or no? I don't want to pay commission. I completely understand, but again, if I could make you more money, including my commission, wouldn't that be worth it and save you the time? You know, take this off your plate. Will you reduce your commission? What's more important to you, the amount of money you net or the amount of commissions you pay? Let's look at the big picture. Are you more worried about how much you pay me? Are you more worried about how much you walk away from the table with? I don't think you have enough experience to sell my home. I'm a new agent. However, I have experience in this price range. My team has experience doing this. We work collaboratively, and a lot of agents don't do that. They're out there floating around on their own. They don't have other agents to help them with open houses. They don't have other agents to prospect in their database to. We do. The market is so hot I can sell on my own. Market is not hot. There's limited inventory, but things have to be priced right because buyers are very specific these days. If we did list, we would use a friend. Okay, is your friend a full-time agent? Or is it somebody that just has their real estate license? Because that's a whole different conversation. Do you want to share all your personal information with your friend when it comes to your finances? I get some people are open to doing that, but a lot of people aren't. They don't want their good friends involved or their family involved in knowing all of that stuff, because those are some things we have to talk about. What if I offered to pay your friend a referral? That way they get something, but you have somebody who does this full time who can really look out for your best interests. I'm not above that. You know what I mean? So again, this talked about Redux. I touched on that, but hopefully this gives you guys some things to think about. Where we are in this marketplace right now, if you're caught up on your to-dos and you don't have an appointment to go to, what do we talk about? Why do agents fail? They don't fill their week with work. What are you doing outside of the resources you're given directly? Because that's never intended to be everything. That's intended to give you a step up to help you start to build a foundation. But what are you doing? You're welcome, Ellen. Thank you. That's it. take advantage of some of these other opportunities, right? Just like I talked about getting out there, giving your business card to people where you spend money, your sphere of influence, kids, sports teams, church, salon, wherever you go. Make sure people know what you do. Wear those new name tags, get out there and start thinking about how you can be creative and attack and get some more business from other areas. Any other questions or points for discussion?
I'm good, Doug. I appreciate it.
I hope this was helpful for everybody and gave you some things to think about.
Absolutely. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yes, it was very helpful.
I'm glad. I'll send out a recap with links to these other things so you guys can read back through them, okay? I'm around if you need me this weekend. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be close to the phone, if not right on top of it. So have a great Friday and weekend and look forward to seeing you soon.
And everybody, I'm doing open house for 645 Morris Landing tomorrow. And then I'm doing Janine's on Saturday or Sunday from 1 to 3. So if anybody has anybody who wants to come by, I'll be there. Mark's coming with me tomorrow too. So
Yep.
Thanks for letting him tag team that, Connor.
Yes, thank you.
Janine,
Of
thanks for
course.
the opportunity for the opens. Hey, tag me when you do your open house post. Remember, use the link to the property on your site. That way, if people register, they come to you. Mark, do the same thing. Link to the house on your site, and make your own post and say you're going to be there with Connor or whatever. Tag me and tag the company, and I can share them on my page. I can share them on the company pages as well. And tag Janine so she can share them too.
okay, I'm gonna send it over to Mel just to get a new face for it than the last two I've had. So just to see.
Okay. Like I said, I'm here if you need me, guys. Don't hesitate to reach out. Have such a great weekend and let me know if I can help.
Okay. Eli, do y'all do Hendersonville or Henderson?
We can. It's north of town, about an hour, but we can get up there.
Okay. I have somebody in my boomtown that's looking in Henderson, and it's like 3.5 hours from here. So I was like, maybe I'll do it. So
Henderson.
I'll send her over.
Not in Nevada. Okay.
It's a roughly an hour or so, pretty much due north of.
Oh yeah. Just the east of Oxford. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you want that?
I'll take it.
Okay, I'll send that over to you.
All right, appreciate it.
Thanks, Connor.
Y'all have a great weekend.
You too.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks. Hey, Doug, you still
Yes,
there?
sir. Yep.
Yeah, just about the training,
Huh?
and then I guess also about the social media. So I started doing the practice loop.
Uh-huh.
Again, I don't have MLS access, so I was just filling it in with all the details I had there. So I think I didn't get all the way through. I had some questions. I guess when we meet maybe on Monday, we can finish that up.
Absolutely.
Is that okay? Am I okay to go with
Yes.
Sisu now?
That was my plan. Go ahead and get through as much of it as you can, and we'll recap everything. Have you reached out to Jabor yet? Well, yeah, I know you did.
Yes.
About it. So
Yeah.
hopefully they'll get you access early next week.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Well, they basically I called and they couldn't answer any information or questions because the two people were away on conference.
Oh.
And so, yeah, it was a little bit harder to get an appointment for that. So it's Monday. It should be after the first meeting, but before our 101. Fits right in there in between. So I'll probably do the call there at the office. As far as like doing the open house and sharing on social media and whatnot, like again, I think with the original application, I did send the links to like my Facebook and LinkedIn. Did I? Because I'm like never on there, and it's so dead and so many old pictures. I'm almost scared because I really